let's talk about our strong starts, our starts of the week in week 10. Guys that we expect to exceed expectations, whether that's a deeper kind of streamer name that we think is going to blow up that you can plug in. Maybe it's a stud that's coming off a rough outing or is heading into a tough match, and we're going to tell you, hey, don't fret, don't worry, plug them right back into your lineup. We had a couple big hits last week. I know like Marvin Jones was a deeper name who ended up, he didn't kill you, but he was solid. Swift, A.J. Brown.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen absolutely exploded, which actually leads me to my quarterback start of the week, which is Jared Goff against the Seattle Seahawks. So you picked Allen in that matchup last week. I'm going back to,
I love it.
with a different quarterback in the same matchup in Jared Goff. Same process here. And Seattle is the second highest scoring offense in the league, and they're the second easiest matchup for quarterbacks. From a fantasy perspective, the Seahawks are an absolute dream. The Rams are coming off a bye week. They've now had 2 weeks to prepare for a home divisional matchup against the Seahawks, so this should be a fun one. So Goff is everything you want in a streaming quarterback. I know he hasn't been the most efficient. He's had a pretty low floor, compared to a lot of other quarterbacks, but in the right matchup, you can plug him in. And, we look at Seattle, it's not going to get much better than that.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm starting him in our home league, Steph, and I'm super hyped about it, actually, because Seattle has just given up the points to the quarterback position. But my start of the week's a little more dicey. It's not quite as chalk, and it's in that streaming range. It's Tua Tagovailoa against the Los Angeles Chargers in the battle of these two rookie quarterbacks, Herbert and Tua. And honestly, this just comes down to what I saw from Tua last week and a nice matchup. The Chargers are 24th against the quarterback position in fantasy football, so they're definitely giving it up, and they're allowing 27 points per game so far this season. So I expect this to be a higher scoring game. I expect Tua to need to throw the ball a little bit more. That is, if their defense stops scoring touchdowns. And the best thing about Tua is he adds a really nice rushing baseline. I mean, last week we saw the 7 carries for 35 yards. He was moving in the pocket, scrambling, things like that. So if he can get loose and run in a touchdown, he might not need to throw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. So I like Tua as a really nice floor option if you're feeling like rolling the dice here in week 10. Obviously I'd rather have Herbert in this battle of rookies, but if you're looking at the waiver wire needing a start with Mahomes or Matt Ryan on bye, look no further than Tua.
I'm all in on Justin Herbert. I've been such a big Herbert fan. I think this rookie shootout's going to be so fun. And what's crazy with Herbert in the game since he's taken over, they've only won one game and lost 6, and their combined loss total from a point standpoint is 24 points. So they just keep losing these down-to-the-wire shootouts. We saw it again in Week 9 with 2 different attempts in the back of the end zone where Herbert was throwing these perfect balls, but the receivers couldn't come down with it. I'm excited for this game, actually. The game of Kyler versus Tua last week, that Miami-Arizona matchup was such a fun one to watch. But let me get into my running back start of the week. It's Leonard Fournette against the Carolina Panthers. I think he's a solid RB2 with upside this week. And the thing about Fournette is that he's been seeing the same, if not more, receptions than any other Buccaneers receiving option. That's including Godwin, Evans, Antonio Brown, and Gronk. All those guys except for AB had 6 receptions, and AB had 5. You look at Rojo, he's pretty much unstartable at this point. He did actually see 4 targets of his own. And bottom line with that backfield situation with Rojo and Fournette is that the volume is going to be there for Tom Brady running backs through the air. It's just a fact. And it's just going to continue. And they're not going to fade away from that. Give me that in a good matchup against a bottom 5 run defense with the Panthers, where the rushing volume can still be there in the double-digit ranges for Fournette, and there's a chance to score if the offense gets moving again. We've seen Fournette still have splash plays on the ground. He's top 10 in breakaway run rate. So you throw out the last game where the Bucs crumbled. If things even regress slightly, Fournette should be a shoo-in for 14-plus points with 20-plus point upside if he happens to find the end zone against Carolina.
Wow, another start of the week that's for the bold there, Steph. I mean, I like it. It's going to be interesting in this game against Carolina, real quick, to see what happens if the Bucs get up in this game. We've seen Fournette be hyper involved the last couple of weeks because they needed to pass, and he is their pass catching back, and Rojo's kind of gotten phased out. It's going to be interesting to see what happens against Carolina if they jump out to an early lead, whether Fournette gets some of that groundwork or whether Rojo is the one grinding out that clock if they do have a lead early. I certainly would rather start Fournette than Rojo in this game, but it's going to be interesting to see how that backfield continues to shake out. And my start of the week is another split backfield. At least we think it's going to be this week with Nick Chubb coming back. It's Kareem Hunt against the Houston Texans. And this one's all about the matchup. Houston is 29th against the running back position. I mean, Houston just got gashed last week by Jake Luton and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think Kareem Hunt's going to be fantastic in this game. He's a great pass-catching option. Even with Nick Chubb coming back, some people are going to have concerns with Kareem Hunt. But I think Chubb, like we've seen time and time again in the season, unless your name's Christian McCaffrey, guys coming off of injury have kind of had to shake off the rust. They've gotten worked into the offense. I expect that to be the case for Nick Chubb as well. Coming into this game, I expect Hunt to still get a really, really strong workload. And let's not forget that over the first few weeks of the season, Kareem Hunt was still an RB1 while he was sharing this backfield full time with Nick Chubb. So don't fear the comeback of Chubb in this offense. Keep rolling Kareem Hunt out there with confidence. The matchup certainly helps as well against the Houston.
It's a low-key, really, really fun matchup for fantasy, this Texans-Browns game, which is why my wide receiver start of the week is Brandon Cooks against the Cleveland Browns. And we got to change our perspective now on Cooks. You know, over time, as you get new data, you see how the games play out, you got to change your mindset on a lot of these players, no matter how high or how low you drafted them. And if we take out the goose egg game, that 0-point outing, the game where Bill O'Brien got fired, Brandon Cooks has been at 15.1 fantasy points a game. That's 21st amongst wide receivers. And if you look at Cooks since Bill O'Brien was fired, so just a shorter stretch there, he's at 20.5 fantasy points per game, which would be third amongst all wide receivers. And it seems like the floor has magically regenerated for Brandon Cooks. 9 or more targets in the last couple games is what you need from Deshaun Watson. We saw him have a 57-yard breakaway touchdown catch. Brandon Cooks still has some juice. Fire him up against a secondary that gives up 42 points a week to wide receivers.
I love it, Steph. And let's stay in that Cleveland-Houston matchup. I'm going with Jarvis Landry against the Houston Texans. You said everything that needed to be said about the matchup. I mentioned it earlier. DJ Chark just posted 27 points against this Houston Texans defense with Jake Luton throwing him the ball. Imagine what Jarvis Landry is going to do in this game. He's going to be a target hog from Baker Mayfield. He saw 11 targets last week with no OBJ. So, I mean, this just has breakout game written all over it if Jarvis is able to get into the end zone. He had one almost touchdown in that first game without OBJ that got called back. He did drop it, but it was pretty close. So I expect OBJ to be locking in on him time and time again, and even in the red zone in this one. And talk about the matchup some more. Houston is 26th against fantasy football wide receivers this season, 48 points per game given up to opposing wide receivers. Who else on the Browns is going to get those points at the wide receiver position? It's going to be a lot of Jarvis Landry in this game. It's a 51.5 point over-under. Expect a lot of points in this one, and for the sake of our starts of the week, let's hope it's a shootout.
Even Austin Hooper, you could see some of that volume as well, so I think he's another interesting streamer option. If he was out there, you can pick him up and plug him in, as I know you're doing in some spots, Alex. But my tight end start of the week is Dallas Goedert. You know, we know this tight end landscape is absolutely brutal. Always has been over the last couple of years. But Dallas Goedert plays the Giants. He got the rust off back in, week 8. Then he got the bye week. If you stashed Goddard, now is the time to take the risk and plug him in if you need him. In the matchup we all loved watching, right, on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago, Eagles versus Giants, they're right back at it. Zach Ertz is still injured. Goddard's coming off a pretty intense injury, a high ankle sprain and a fractured tibia. So I'm willing to cut him some slack, kind of easing back onto the field. And the indicator for me that he's going to have a good game here is that he was on the field a ton, even coming off that injury, enough to feel good about his health. Goddard played on 83% of snaps in the game against Dallas, where they really didn't need to throw the ball that much. He only saw one target, which he did catch and take for 15 yards. So you'd think, hey, the volume's going to go up. This offense might be at finally full health or some semblance of it with Miles Sanders, Alshon Jeffrey, Jalen Reagor, and Travis Fulgham all healthy. It seems that Wentz is going to find a way to make plays and move the ball. I mean, if most people think Wentz is as good as they think he is, then there should be no problem here for Dallas Goedert to eat. And in that case, I am willing to plug him in as a Carson Wentz fan.
I like it. I'm staying in that same game. That's my theme. I'm just staying in the same games that you are, Steph. I'm going Evan Engram on the other side of the ball against Philly. Evan Engram burned a lot of people early this season, but he is getting absolute volume in this Giants offense. And you just have to chase the targets at the tight end position because it is so thin this season. He's been involved all year long, just has had no efficiency, and we're finally starting to see him come on a little bit. But if you look at the full season, he's getting 7 targets a game. That's third at the tight end position. Over the last 3 weeks, he's the tight end 3. I know it's a small sample size, but he's finally getting up to speed for what we expected Evan Engram to be this season. And back to the matchup. It's great. The Eagles are 29th in the NFL against the tight end position in terms of fantasy points allowed per game. So you got to roll Evan Engram out there against the Philadelphia Eagles. We know he has the athletic profile to take any play to the house, a 4.42 40-yard dash time, which is absolutely ridiculous considering the average wide receiver 40 time is 4.48 at the combine. So this guy is basically a wide receiver's speed and a tight end's body. So you got to love what you have in Evan Engram. Daniel Jones looks his way early and often. And if you've got him on your team, he's been coming on high, you got to throw him out there this week against Philly.